You can think about AI in healthcare at three different levels. One is making medicine more efficient by taking away the drudgery. We are devising more efficient systems by automation, some of the tasks that doctors have to perform. The second is where AI can help in devising alerting systems where we have early detection of diseases which might be acute or chronic, example being what Ashish talked about, early detection of cancer. Or, for example, work from our lab in early detection of critical outcomes in the intensive care units, or early detection of outbreaks in the public health settings. The third thing that AI can do, what Toby referred to, is actually to revolutionize the knowledge by surprising us and by creating new understandings about how human physiology works, or how health is wired, or how health systems work.
The enthusiasm that women had in the 60s and 70s with different kinds of labor-saving devices coming in. I'm not saying it's exactly similar, but what I'm saying is that in taking away drudgery at that point of time, it made possible the entry of women into the public domain in the workforce in ways in which it simply wasn't possible before, because of the amount of work that simply had to be done, which no one else could do. And with machines doing that work, a different life, a different future became possible. So thank you for that.
Can I just pick up on one point? I think that's yes, such a wonderful summary. But also, what follows on from that is that we then get to decide what that time is that we've got freed up, in what way it's going to be used. And so it stops being a technological question. It becomes a societal question. Okay, well, how then do we ensure that women are best represented in the workforce, and that that's used as a force for good?
Absolutely. So when we were training in history of technology, Melvin Kranzberg, who was one of the founders of the field, had 6 laws of technology. And the one that stayed with me always is where he said, technology is neither good nor bad nor neutral. And I think that's something, if we kind of work with that and if we grasp that strongly in our day-to-day life, we stand to probably benefit and create an AI sphere, so to speak, or an AI world that complements and helps build upon human ability. Would you tell us, how is AI transforming medicine?
So, there's been a fair bit of press on us in the last 1.5 months because we got published in Spring of Nature journal. Effectively, what we have achieved is a technology by which we have achieved 3 global firsts. We can detect cancers, and all cancers, earlier than any known technology, straight from a blood test. So we can detect it prior to tumor formation. And at this stage, we can tell you which cancer and where it is forming straight from a blood test. The second thing is that this is the first prognostic test for cancer. So not only does it tell you that you don't have cancer, we can in fact rule out the risk of cancer for you for the next 1 year. But the key breakthrough that actually makes this technologically possible is that we have made a breakthrough by which we can actually get your transcriptomic or RNA readings from different organs in your body straight from a blood test. If you were to step ahead, the reality is that the scope of that technology then does not only restrict itself to cancer, right? We will perhaps be able to early detect a whole series of other diseases as well. Right. And now, if you actually look at the concept, the reality is that your molecular markers or your genetic markers show the mutations first. Then you get cellular markers, and then you get symptoms. Right. So what we are effectively doing is that we are able to actually detect diseases far earlier than known technologies. Right. I can actually detect your dynamic markers as to which organ is at risk today. Right. Which mutations have you actually got? What medicines could potentially cure them, and so on and so forth. All that is made possible by machine learning or AI, right? Because as a manual process, it just becomes too hard, right? But this is the future that we can actually see.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Pritesh, you are a physician scientist. Can you help us understand in what ways is AI transforming medicine today?
Yeah, sure. So I can begin with the high level changes that are happening. So you can think about AI in healthcare at 3 different levels. One is making medicine more efficient by taking away the drudgery. We are devising more efficient systems by automation, some of the tasks that doctors have to perform. The second is where AI can help in devising alerting systems where we have early detection of diseases which might be acute or chronic, example being what Ashish talked about, early detection of cancer. Or, for example, work from our lab in early detection of critical outcomes in the intensive care units, or early detection of outbreaks in the public health settings. The third thing that AI can do, what Toby referred to, is actually to revolutionize the knowledge by surprising us and by creating new understandings about how physiology, human physiology works, or how health is wired, or how health systems work.
Toby, from your work, what are the areas you see where we're going to see medicine transformed?
I think it's worth remembering it's not going to be magic. It is, but it will let us do things that we couldn't do in the past, even if it's not magic, because it may let us do things at a speed or a scale or an accuracy that's beyond human. And so I've got a couple of examples of that go back to the beginning of life. And I think the important thing to realize is that medicine is still practiced much the way it was 100 years ago. And so there is a great potential, just as in many other areas where AI is being used, to use AI to personalize what the medicine is and how it's delivered. And so let me just give you two examples already out there of how it's going to transform the very nature of life. So the first one is a fantastic Australian company called Life Whisperer, and they're helping people go through IVF, in vitro fertilisation. Now, the most critical thing you do when you're trying to do IVF is work out which of the fertilised eggs to implant to have the greatest possibility of success. And you have more than one fertilised egg to look through. And so they've devised a computer program that looks down a microscope for a day or more at a time and observes the dividing cells and works out which looks like the most promising. Now, that's a wonderful example because human eyes were never evolved to do that task. So that's a life-changing decision. So that was the first example. And the second example, I'm going to go forwards to the moment of birth. We can take a blood sample of you at the moment of birth. Now, I mean, the other revolution that's happening that's, again, at a very appropriate time is the genetic revolution, the fact that we can now read at very low cost people's genotypes, and now we can increasingly start to write those genotypes with things like CRISPR. So we could look at genetic modifications, but we can really start to understand the code book of life. And that's something that human brain couldn't manage to do. So now they can predict a few things, like they can predict at birth how tall you're going to be. They predict the color of your hair, the color of your eyes. Well, that doesn't sound too important, but they can predict really important other things. They can predict your susceptibility to bowel cancer. Now, bowel cancer is a hidden death, a silent death. It kills many people, largely because it's not recognized in time, not because it's not preventable, but because by the nature of where it is, you don't identify it until it's too late. That bowel cancer would be identified at an early stage. We can identify the markers that would be appropriate for that. So those are life-changing ideas, and we're going to see many other examples as medicine becomes, I think, more and more personalized to who you are and what the diseases that you're going to succumb. So that, as I said, hopefully we live longer, healthier, happier lives.
Crystal gaze into the near future with our series Be Inspired, that takes you into the world of AI, medicine, space, good governance, economy, and so much more. Subscribe to our channel now.